The Book of Enoch. Book 4. Visions. Enoch 83. Now, my son Methuselah, I will show you all my visions which I have seen, recounting before you. 2 visions I saw before I took a wife, and the one was quite unlike the other. On the first occasion when I was learning to write, on the second, before I took your mother, I saw a terrible vision, and concerning them I prayed to the Lord. I had laid me down in the house of my grandfather Mahalalel, when I saw in a vision how the heaven collapsed, and was borne off, and fell to the earth. When it fell to the earth I saw how the earth was swallowed up in a great abyss, and mountains hung suspended on mountains, and hills sank down on hills, and high trees were rent from their stems, and hurled down, and sunk in the abyss. Thereupon utterance came into my mouth, and I lifted up my voice to cry aloud, and said, The earth is destroyed. My grandfather Mahalalel waked me as I lay near him, and said unto me, Why dost you cry aloud, my son, and why dost you so make lamentation? Then I recounted to him the whole vision which I had seen, and he said unto me, What you have seen, my son, is terrible, and your dream vision is of grave moment as to the sin of all the sin of the earth. It must sink into the abyss, and be destroyed with a great destruction. Now, my son, arise, and make petition to the Lord of glory, since you are a believer, that a remnant may remain on the earth. My son, all this will come from heaven upon the earth, and there will be violent destruction upon earth. After that I arose, and prayed, and implored, and wrote down my prayer for the generations of the world, and I will show everything to you, my son Methuselah. And when I had gone down, and forth, and saw the heaven, and saw the sun rising in the east, and the moon setting in the west, and a few stars, and the whole earth, and everything as he had known it in the beginning. Then I blessed the Lord of judgment, and extolled him because he made the sun to go forth from the windows of the east, so that he ascends, and rises on the face of the heaven, and sets out, and traverses the path shown unto him. Enoch 84. I uplifted my hands in righteousness, and blessed the Holy and Great One, and spoke with the breath of my mouth, and with the tongue of flesh, which God has made for the children of the flesh of men, that they should speak therewith, and he gave them breath, and a tongue, and a mouth that they should speak therewith. Blessed be you, O Lord, King both great and mighty in your greatness, Lord of the whole creation of the heaven, King of kings, God of the whole world. And your power, kingship, and greatness abide forever, and forever and ever. Your dominion throughout all generations, all the heavens are your throne forever, and the whole earth, your footstool forever, and forever and ever. For you has created, and rules all things, and has made all things fast, and no manner of wisdom escapes thee. She departs not from her throne, your throne, nor from your presence. And you know, and see, and hear everything, and there is nothing which is hidden from thee, for you see everything. Now the angels of your heavens trespass, and your wrath abides upon the flesh of men until the day of the great judgment. Now, O God, and Lord, and great King, I implore and pray thee that you may fulfill my prayer, to leave me a posterity on earth, and not to destroy all the flesh of man, and make the earth without inhabitant, so that there should be an eternal destruction. Now, my Lord, destroy from the earth the flesh which has aroused your wrath, but the flesh of righteousness and uprightness establish as a plant of the seed forever, and hide not your face from the prayer of your servant, O Lord. Enoch 85. After this I saw another dream, and I will show all the vision to you, my son. Enoch lifted up his voice, and spoke unto his son Methuselah. To you, my son, will I speak. Hear my words, incline your ear to the dream vision of your father. Before I took your mother Edna, I saw in a vision of my bed, and behold, a bull came forth from the earth, and that bull was white. And after it came forth a heifer, and along with this came forth 2 young bulls, one of them black, and the other red. That black young bull gored the red one, and pursued him over the earth, and thereupon I could no longer see that red young bull. But the black young bull grew, and a heifer joined him, and I saw that many oxen proceeded from him which resembled, and followed him. And that cow, that first one, went from the presence of the first bull in order to seek that red young bull, but found him not, and thereupon raised a great lamentation, and kept seeking him. I looked until that first bull came to her, and quieted her, and from that hour onward she cried no more. After that she bore another white bull, and after him she bare many bulls, and black cows. In my sleep I saw that white bull likewise grow, and become a great white bull, and from him proceeded many white oxen which resembled him. They began to beget many white oxen which resembled them, one following the other. Enoch 86. Again I saw with mine eyes as I slept, and I saw the heaven above, and behold, a star fell from heaven, and it arose, and ate, and pastured amongst those oxen. After that I saw the large and black oxen, and behold, they all changed their stalls, and pastures, and their cattle, and began to live with each other. Again I saw in the vision, and looked towards the heaven, and behold, I saw many stars descend, and cast themselves down from heaven to that first star, and they became bulls amongst those cattle, and with them pasturing amongst them. I looked at them, and saw, and behold, they all let out their privy members, like horses, and began to cover the cows of the oxen, and they all became pregnant, and bare elephants, camels, and asses. All the oxen feared them, and were affrighted at them, and they began to bite with their teeth, and to devour, and to gore with their horns. They began then to devour those oxen, and behold, all the children of the earth began to tremble, and to quake before them, and to flee. Enoch 87. Again I saw how they began to gore each other, and to devour each other, and the earth began to cry aloud. I again raised mine eyes to heaven, and I saw in the vision, and behold, there came forth from heaven beings who were like white men. One of them came forth from that place, and 3 with him. Those 3 who had last come forth grasped me by my hand, and took me up, away from the generations of the earth, and brought me up to a lofty place, and showed me a tower raised high above the earth, and all the hills were lower. They said unto me, Remain here until you see everything that befalls those elephants, and camels, and asses, and the stars, and the oxen, and all of them. Enoch 88. I saw one of those 4 who had come forth before, and he seized the first star which had fallen from the heaven, and bound it hand and foot, and laid it in an abyss. Now that abyss was narrow, and deep, and horrible, and dark. one of them drew his sword, and gave it to those elephants, and camels, and asses. Then they began to smite each other, and the whole earth quaked because of them. As I was beholding in the vision, lo then one of those four who had come forth cast down from heaven, and they gathered, and took all the great stars whose privy members were like those of horses, and bound them all hand and foot, and laid them in an abyss of the earth. Enoch 89. One of those four went to that white bull, and instructed him in a secret, as he trembled. He was born a bull, and became a man, and built for himself a great vessel, and dwelt thereon. And 3 bulls dwelt with him in that vessel, and they were covered in. Again I raised mine eyes toward heaven, and saw a lofty roof, with 7 water torrents thereon, and those torrents poured much water into an enclosure. I saw again, and behold, fountains were opened on the earth in that great enclosure, and the water began to swell, and rise upon the earth, and it hid that enclosure from view until the whole surface of it was covered with water. The water, the darkness, and mist increased upon it. And as I looked at the height of that flood, it rose above the height of that enclosure, and streamed over that enclosure, and remained on the earth. All the cattle of that enclosure were gathered together until I saw how they sank, and were swallowed up, and perished in that flood. But that vessel floated on the water, while all the oxen, and elephants, and camels, and asses sank to the bottom together with all the animals, so that I could no longer see them, and they were not able to come out, but perished, and sank into the depths. Again I saw in the vision until those water torrents were removed from that high roof, and the chasms of the earth were levelled up, and other abysses were opened. Then the water began to run down into these, until the earth became visible. But that vessel settled on the earth, and the darkness retired, and light appeared. But that white bull which had become a man came out of that vessel, and the 3 bulls with him, and one of the 3 was white like to the bull, and one of them was red as blood, and one black. And that white bull departed from them. They began to bring forth beasts of the field, and birds, so that there arose out of them altogether a multitude of kinds: lions, tigers, dogs, wolves, hyenas, wild boars, foxes, squirrels, swine, falcons, vultures, kites, eagles, and ravens. And among them was born a white bull. They began to bite one another. But that white bull which was born amongst them begat a wild ass, and a white bull with it, and the wild ass multiplied. But that bull which was born from him begat a black wild boar, and a white sheep. And that wild boar begat many boars, but that sheep begat 12 sheep. When those 12 sheep had grown, they gave up one of them to the asses, and these asses again gave up that sheep to the wolves, and that sheep grew up among the wolves. The Lord brought the 11 sheep to live with it, and to pasture with it among the wolves, and they multiplied, and became many flocks of sheep. The wolves began to fear them, and they oppressed them until they destroyed their young, and they cast their young into a river of much water. But those sheep began to cry aloud on account of their young, and to complain unto their Lord. A sheep which had been saved from the wolves fled, and escaped to the wild asses. And I saw the sheep how they lamented, and cried, and besought their Lord with all their might, until that Lord of the sheep descended at the voice of the sheep from a lofty abode, and came to them, and pastured them. He called the sheep which had escaped the wolves, and spoke with it concerning the wolves, that it should admonish them not to touch the sheep. the sheep went to the wolves according to the word of the Lord, and another sheep met it, and went with it, and the two went, and entered together into the assembly of those wolves, and spoke with them, and admonished them not to touch the sheep from henceforth. Thereupon I saw the wolves, and how they oppressed the sheep exceedingly with all their power, and the sheep cried aloud. Their Lord came to the sheep, and began to smite those wolves. Then the wolves began to make lamentation, but the sheep became quiet, and forthwith ceased to cry out. I saw the sheep until they departed from amongst the wolves, but the eyes of the wolves were blinded, and those wolves departed in pursuit of the sheep with all their power. The Lord of the sheep went with them, as their leader, and all his sheep followed him. His face was dazzling, and glorious, and terrible to behold. But the wolves began to pursue those sheep until they found them by a sea of water. This sea was divided, and the water stood on this side, and on that before their face, and their Lord who led them placed himself between them and the wolves. As those wolves did not yet see the sheep, they proceeded into the midst of the sea, and the wolves pursued the sheep, and those wolves ran after them into that sea. When they saw the Lord of the sheep, they turned to flee before his face, but that sea gathered itself together, and resumed its own nature suddenly, and the water swelled, and rose until it covered those wolves. I saw until all the wolves which pursued those sheep perished, and were drowned. But the sheep escaped from the water, and went forth into a wilderness, where there was no water, and no grass. And they began to open their eyes, and to see. And I saw the Lord of the sheep pasturing them, and giving them water, and grass, and that sheep going, and leading them. That sheep ascended to the summit of the lofty rock, and the Lord of the sheep sent it to them. After that I saw the Lord of the sheep standing before them, and his appearance was great, and terrible, and majestic, and all those sheep saw him, and were afraid before his face. They all feared, and trembled because of him, and they cried to the sheep which was with them, which was amongst them, We are not able to endure the presence of our Lord or to behold him. That sheep which led them again ascended to the summit of that rock, but the sheep began to be blinded, and to wander from the way which he had showed them, but that sheep was not thereof. The Lord of the sheep was wrathful exceedingly against them, and that sheep discovered it, and went down from the summit of the rock, and came to the sheep, and found the greatest part of them blinded, and fallen away. When they saw it, they feared, and trembled at its presence, and desired to return to their folds. That sheep took other sheep with it, and came to those sheep which had fallen away, and thereupon began to slay them. And the sheep feared its presence, and that sheep brought back those sheep that had fallen away, and they returned to their folds. I saw in this vision until that sheep became a man, and built a house for the Lord of the sheep, and placed all the sheep in that house. I saw until this sheep which had met that sheep which led the sheep fell asleep, and I saw until all the great sheep perished, and little ones arose in their place, and they came to a pasture, and approached a stream of water. Then that sheep which led them, and became a man, withdrew from them, and fell asleep, and all the sheep sought it, and lamented over it with a great lamentation. I saw until they left off crying for that sheep, and crossed that stream of water, and there always arose other sheep as leaders in the place of those which had led them, and fallen asleep. I saw until the sheep came to a goodly place, and a pleasant and glorious land, and I saw until those sheep were satisfied, and that house stood amongst them in the pleasant land. Sometimes their eyes were opened, and sometimes blinded, until another sheep arose, and led them, and brought them all back, and their eyes were opened. The dogs, and the foxes, and the wild boars began to devour those sheep until the Lord of the sheep raised up another sheep, a ram from their midst, which led them. That ram began to butt on either side those dogs, foxes, and wild boars until he had destroyed them all. The eyes of the sheep were opened, and it saw that ram, which was amongst the sheep, forgetting its dignity, and beginning to butt those sheep, and trampling upon them, and behaving itself unseemly. The Lord of the sheep sent the lamb to another lamb, and raised it to being a ram, and leader of the sheep instead of the ram which had been forgetful of its dignity. It went to it, and spoke with it alone, and raised it to being ram, and made it the prince, and leader of the sheep. But during all these things those dogs oppressed the sheep. The first ram pursued that second ram, and that second ram arose, and fled before it. And I saw until those dogs pulled down the first ram. That second ram arose, and led the sheep, and that ram begat many sheep, and fell asleep. And a little sheep became ram in its stead, and became prince, and leader of those sheep. Those sheep grew, and multiplied. And all the dogs, and foxes, and wild boars feared, and fled before it, and that ram butted, and killed all the wild beasts, and those wild beasts had no longer any power among the sheep, and robbed them no more of aught. That house became great, and broad, and a lofty, and great tower was built for those sheep. It was built on the house for the Lord of the sheep, and that house was low, but the tower was elevated, and lofty, and the Lord of the sheep stood on that tower, and a full table was placed before him. Again I saw those sheep that they again erred, and went many ways, and forsook their house, and the Lord of the sheep called some from amongst them, and sent them to the sheep, but the sheep began to slay them. One of them was saved, and was not slain, and it sped away, and cried aloud over the sheep. And they wanted to slay it, but the Lord of the sheep saved it from the sheep, and brought it up to me, and caused it to dwell. Many other sheep he sent to those sheep to testify, and lament over them. After that I saw that when they forsook the house of the Lord, and his tower, they fell away entirely, and their eyes were blinded. And I saw the Lord of the sheep how he wrought much slaughter amongst them in their individual herds, until those sheep invited such slaughter, and betrayed his place. He gave them over into the hands of the lions, and tigers, and wolves, and hyenas, and into the hand of the foxes, and to all the wild beasts, and those wild beasts began to tear in pieces those sheep. I saw that he forsook their house, and their tower, and gave them all into the hand of the lions to tear, and devour them, into the hand of all the wild beasts. I began to cry aloud with all my power, and to appeal to the Lord of the sheep, and to represent to him in regard to the sheep that they were being devoured by all the wild beasts. But he remained unmoved, as he saw it, and rejoiced that they were devoured, and swallowed, and robbed, and left them to be devoured in the hand of all the beasts. He called 70 shepherds, and put away those sheep that they might pasture them, and he spoke to the shepherds, and their companions. Let each individual of you pasture the sheep henceforward, and everything that I shall command you what you do. I will deliver them over unto you duly numbered, and will tell you which of them are to be destroyed, and those destroy you. And he gave over unto them those sheep. he called another, and spoke unto him, Observe, and mark everything which the shepherds will do to those sheep, for they will destroy more of them than I have commanded them. Every excess, and the destruction which will be wrought through the shepherds, record how many they destroy according to my command, and how many according to their own caprice, and record against every individual shepherd all the destruction he effects. Read out before me by number how many they destroy, and how many they deliver over for destruction, that I may have this as a testimony against them, and know every deed of the shepherds, so that when I give over to them the sheep I may see what they do, whether or not they abide by my command which I have commanded them. But they shall not know it, and you shall not declare it to them, nor admonish them, but only record against each individual in each case all the destruction which the shepherds effect, and lay it all before me. I saw until those shepherds pastured in their season, and they began to slay, and to destroy more than they were bidden, and they delivered those sheep into the hand of the lions. The lions and tigers ate, and devoured the greater part of those sheep, and the wild boars ate along with them, and they burned that tower, and demolished that house. I became exceedingly sorrowful over the tower, because that house of the sheep was demolished, and afterwards I was unable to see if those sheep entered that house. The shepherds and their associates delivered over those sheep to all the wild beasts, to devour them, and each one of them received in his time a definite number, and the other wrote of each one of them in a book how many each of them destroyed. Each one slew and destroyed many more than was prescribed, and I began to weep and lament on account of those sheep. Thus in the vision I saw the scribe how he wrote down every one that was destroyed by those shepherds, day by day, and carried this same entire book up to the Lord of the sheep, and laid it down, and showed everything that they had done, and all that each one of them had made away with, and all that they had given over to destruction. The book was read before the Lord of the sheep, and he took the book from his hand, and read it, and sealed it, and laid it down. Forthwith I saw how the shepherds pastured for 12 hours, and behold 3 of those sheep turned back, and came, and entered, and began to build up all the ruins of the house. But the wild boars tried to hinder them, but they were not able. They began again to build as before, and they reared up that tower, and it was named the High Tower, and they began again to place a table before the tower, but all the bread on it was polluted, and not pure. Besides all, the eyes of these sheep were blinded so that they saw not, and the eyes of their shepherds likewise, and they were delivered in large numbers to their shepherds for destruction, and they trampled the sheep with their feet, and devoured them. The Lord of the sheep remained unmoved until all the sheep were dispersed over the field, and mingled with them, and they did not save them out of the hand of the beasts. He who wrote the book brought it up, and showed it, and read it before the Lord of the sheep, and implored him on their account, and besought him, as he showed him all the doings of those shepherds, and gave testimony before him against all the shepherds. He took this book, and laid it down beside him, and departed. Enoch 90. I saw until that in this manner 36 shepherds undertook the pasturing of the sheep, and they severally completed their periods as did the first, and others received them into their hand, to pasture them for their period, each shepherd for his own period. After that I saw in the vision all the birds of heaven coming, the eagles, the vultures, the kites, the ravens, but the eagles led all the birds, and they began to devour those sheep, and to pick out their eyes, and to devour their flesh. The sheep cried out because their flesh was devoured by the birds, and as I looked I lamented in my sleep over that shepherd who pastured the sheep. I saw until those sheep were devoured by the dogs, and eagles, and kites, and they left neither flesh nor skin nor sinew remaining on them until only their skeletons stood there. Their skeletons too fell to the earth, and the sheep became few. I saw until that 23 undertook the pasturing, and they completed in their several periods 58 times. But behold, lambs were born by those white sheep, and they began to open their eyes, and to see, and to cry to the sheep. But the sheep did not cry to them, and did not hear what they said to them, but were exceedingly deaf, and their eyes were exceedingly and forcibly blinded. I saw in the vision how the ravens flew upon those lambs, and took one of those lambs, and dashed the sheep in pieces, and devoured them. I saw until horns grew upon those lambs, and the ravens cast down their horns. And I saw until a great horn of one of those sheep branched forth, and their eyes were opened. It looked at them, and their eyes opened, and it cried to the sheep, and the rams saw it, and all ran to it. And notwithstanding all this, those eagles, and vultures, and ravens, and kites still kept tearing the sheep, and swooping down upon them, and devouring them. Still the sheep took no action, but the rams lamented, and cried out. Those ravens fought, and battled with it, and sought to destroy his horn, but they had no power over it. I saw them until the shepherds, and eagles, and those vultures, and kites came, and they cried to the ravens that they should break the horn of the ram, and they battled, and fought with it, and it battled with them, and cried that his succor should come unto him. I saw until that man who wrote down the names of the shepherds, and carried up unto the presence of the Lord of the sheep came, and he helped the ram, and showed it everything one, that he had come down to help it. I saw until that Lord of the sheep came to them in wrath, and all who saw him fled, and all cast themselves into the darkness from before his face. All the eagles, and vultures, and ravens, and kites assembled together, and brought with them all the sheep of the field, and they all came together, and helped each other to break that horn of the ram. I saw that man who wrote the book according to the command of the Lord, until he opened that book concerning the destruction which those 12 last shepherds had wrought, and showed that they had destroyed much more than their predecessors before the Lord of the sheep. I saw until the Lord of the sheep came unto them, and took the staff of his wrath into his hand, and smote the earth so that it was rent asunder, and all the beasts and the birds of the heaven fell away from the sheep, and sank in the earth, and it closed over them. I saw until a great sword was given to the sheep, and the sheep proceeded against all the beasts of the field to slay them. And all the beasts and the birds of the heaven fled before their face. I saw until a throne was erected in a pleasant land, and the Lord of the sheep sat himself thereon, and that other took the sealed books, and opened them before the Lord of the sheep. The Lord called those 7 first white ones, and commanded that they should bring before him, beginning with the first star which led the way, all the stars whose privy members were like those of horses, and they brought them all before him. He spoke to that man who wrote before him, who was one of the 7 white ones, and said unto him, Take those 70 shepherds to whom I delivered the sheep, and who taking them on their own authority slew more than I commanded them. Behold, they were all bound, I saw, and they all stood before him. The judgment was held first over the stars, and they were judged, and found guilty, and went to the place of condemnation, and they were cast into an abyss, full of fire, and flaming, and full of pillars of fire. Those 70 shepherds were judged, and found guilty, and likewise cast into that fiery abyss. I saw at that time how like abyss was opened in the midst of the earth, full of fire, and those blinded sheep were brought, and they were all judged, and found guilty, and cast into that fiery abyss, and they burned. Now this abyss was to the right of that house. I saw those sheep burning, and their bones burning. I stood up to see until he folded up that old house, and all the pillars were taken away, and all the beams and ornaments of the house were folded up with it, and it was taken off, and laid in a place in the south of the land. I saw the Lord of the sheep until he brought a new house greater and loftier than that first, and set it up in the place of the first which had been folded up. All its pillars were new, and its ornaments were new, and larger than those of the first one which he had taken away, and the Lord of the sheep was within it. I saw all the sheep which had been left, and all the beasts on the earth, and all the birds of the heaven, falling down, and doing homage to those sheep, and making petition to, and obeying them in every word. Thereafter those 3 who were clothed in white, who had taken me up before, seized me by my hand, and the hand of that ram seizing hold of me, they took me up, and set me down in the midst of those sheep before the judgment took place. Those sheep were all white, and their wool was abundant, and clean. All that had been destroyed, and dispersed, and all the beasts of the field, and all the birds of the heaven assembled in that house, and the Lord of the sheep rejoiced with great joy, because they were all good, and had returned to his house. I saw until they laid down that sword which had been given to the sheep, and they brought it back into his house, and it was sealed before the presence of the Lord, and all the sheep were invited into that house, but it held them not. The eyes of them all were opened to see the good, and there was not one amongst them that did not see. I saw that that house was large, and broad, and very full. I saw that a white bull was born, with large horns, and all the beasts of the field, and all the birds of the air feared him, and made petition to him all the time. I saw until all their kinds were transformed, and they all became white oxen, and the first among them became the buffalo, and that buffalo became a great animal, and had great black horns on its head, and the Lord of the sheep rejoiced over them, and over all the oxen. I slept in their midst. Then I awoke, and saw everything. This is the vision which I saw while I slept. I awoke, and blessed the Lord of righteousness, and gave him glory. Then I fell into a great fit of weeping, and my tears stayed not until I could no longer endure it. When I looked, they flowed on account of what I saw, for everything will come, and be fulfilled, and all the deeds of men in their order were shown to me. In that night I remembered my first dream. On its account also I wept, and was overcome, because I had seen that vision. Enoch Slavonic 41. And I saw all our forefathers from the beginning with Adam and Eve, and I sighed and wept, and spake of the ruin of their wickedness. Woe is me for my infirmity, and that of my forefathers. I meditated in my heart, and said, Blessed is the man who was not born, or, having been born, has never sinned before the face of the Lord, so that he should not come into this place, to bear the yoke of this place. Enoch Slavonic 42. I saw those who keep the keys, and are the guardians of the gates of hell, standing like great serpents, and their faces were like quenched lamps, and their eyes were fiery, and their teeth were sharp. They were stripped to their waist. I said before their faces, would that I had not seen you, nor heard of your doings, and that those of my race had never come to you. Now they have only sinned a little in this life, and always suffer in the eternal life. I went out to the east, to the paradise of Eden, where rest has been prepared for the just, and it is open to the third heaven, and shut from this world. Guards are placed at the very great gates of the east of the sun, fiery angels singing triumphant songs, that never cease rejoicing in the presence of the just. At the last coming they will lead forth Adam with our forefathers, and conduct them there, that they may rejoice, as a man calls those whom he loves to feast with him. And they having come with joy hold converse, before the dwelling of that man, with joy awaiting his feast, the enjoyment, and the immeasurable wealth, and joy, and merriment in the light, and eternal life. Then I said, I tell you, my children, blessed is he who fears the name of the Lord, and serves continually before his face, and brings his gifts with fear continually in this life, and lives all his life justly, and dies. Blessed is he who executes a just judgment, not for the sake of recompense, but for the sake of righteousness, expecting nothing in return. A sincere judgment shall afterwards come to him. Blessed is he who clothes the naked with a garment, and gives his bread to the hungry. Blessed is he who gives a just judgment for the orphan, and the widow, and assists every one who is wronged. Blessed is he who turns from the unstable path of this vain world, and walks by the righteous path which leads to eternal life. Blessed is he who sows just seed, he shall reap sevenfold. Blessed is he in whom is the truth, that he may speak the truth to his neighbor. Blessed is he who has love upon his lips, and tenderness in his heart. Blessed is he who understands every work of the Lord, and glorifies the Lord God. For the works of the Lord are just, and of the works of man some are good, and others evil, and by their works those who have wrought them are known. Enoch Slavonic 43. Lo, my children, the things which I have gained on the earth, and meditated upon from the Lord God I have written down both winter and summer. I have compiled the account of all, and concerning the years I have calculated each hour. I have measured the hours, and written out the lists of them, and I have ascertained all their differences. As one year is more honorable than another, so is one man more honorable than another. This man on account of many possessions, that man on account of the wisdom of the heart, this man on account of understanding, another on account of cunning, this man for the silence of the lips, this man on account of purity, that on account of strength, this man on account of comeliness, another on account of youth, this man on account of sharpness of mind, another on account of quick-sightedness of body, and another for the perception of many things. Let it be heard everywhere, there is no one greater than he who fears God. He shall be the most glorious forever. Enoch Slavonic 44. God made man with his own hands, in the likeness of his countenance, both small and great the Lord created him. He who reviles the countenance of man, reviles the countenance of the Lord. He who shows wrath against another without injury, the great wrath of the Lord shall consume him. If a man spits at the face of another insultingly, he shall be consumed in the great judgment of the Lord. Blessed is the man who does not direct his heart with malice against any man, and who assists the man who is injured, and under judgment, and raises up the oppressed, and accomplishes the prayer of him who asks. For in the day of the great judgment, every measure, and standard, and weight, which is for traffic, namely, that which is hung on a balance, and stands for traffic, knows its own measure, and shall receive its reward by measure. Enoch Slavonic 45. He who hastens, and brings his offering before the face of the Lord, then the Lord will hasten the accomplishment of his work, and will execute a just judgment for him. He who increases his lamp before the face of the Lord increases greatly his treasure in the heavenly kingdom. God does not require bread, nor a light, nor an animal, nor any other sacrifice, for it is as nothing. But God requires a pure heart, and by means of all this, he tries the heart of man. Enoch Slavonic 46. Hear, my people, and pay attention to the words of my lips. If anyone brings gifts to an earthly prince, but having unfaithfulness in his heart, if the prince knows it, will he not be angry with him on account of that, and he will not take his gifts, and will hand him over to condemnation? Or if a man flatters another in his language, but plans evil against him in his heart, will not the other understand the craft of his heart, and he himself will be condemned, so that his unrighteousness will be evident to all? But when God shall send the great light, by means of that there will be judgment to the just and unjust, and nothing will be concealed. Enoch Slavonic 47. Now my children, put my thoughts in your hearts. Pay attention to the words of your Father, which have come to you from the mouth of the Lord. Take these books of the writings of your Father, and read them, and in them you shall learn all the works of the Lord. There have been many books from the beginning of creation, and shall be to the end of the world, but none shall make things known to you like my writings. But if you shall preserve my writings, you will not sin against God. For there is no other besides the Lord, neither in heaven nor on earth, nor the depths below, nor the solitary foundations. God established the foundations upon things that are unknown, and stretched out the visible and invisible heavens, and made firm the earth upon the waters, and established the waters on things that are not fixed. Who has created all the innumerable works of creation? Who has numbered the dust of the earth, and the sand of the sea, and the drops of rain, and the dew of the morning, and the breath of the wind? Who has bound earth and sea with bonds that cannot be broken up, and has cut the stars out of fire, and beautified the heavens, and placed the sun in the midst of them? Enoch Slavonic 48. The sun goes in the 7 circles of the heavens, and I gave him 182 thrones when he goes on a short day, and also 182 thrones when he goes on a long day. He has 2 great thrones on which he rests, returning here, and there are the monthly thrones. From the month of Sivan after 17 days he descends to the month of Tevan, and from the 17th day of Tevad he ascends. So the sun goes through all the courses of the heaven. When he goes near the earth, then the earth rejoices, and produces its fruit. When he departs, then the earth is sad, and the trees, and all the fruits have no development. All this by measure and minute arrangement of time he has arranged by his wisdom, both in the case of things visible and invisible. He has made all things visible out of invisible, himself being invisible. So I tell you, my children, distribute the books to your children, in all your families, and among the nations. Those who are wise, let them fear God, and let them receive them, and let them love them more than any kind of food, and read them. But those who are senseless, and have no thought of the Lord, and do not fear God, will not receive them, but turn away, and keep themselves from them. The terrible judgment shall await them. Blessed is the man who bears their yoke, and puts it on, for he shall be set free in the day of the great judgment.